With new Subarus being hard to come by due to supply chain issues, part issues, and the overall state of the world, it's now prime time to look at buying a used Subaru. Today we will continue our series of buyer's guide videos for Subaru vehicles by covering Subaru's bestseller, the Forester. Again, as before, we'll be covering the last 20 years or so of models, talking about their strengths, their weaknesses, which models you want to buy, and which ones you might want to avoid. So to start out the video, let's go back to the second generation of Forester, the SG chassis. This happens to be one of my personal favorite generations in both appearance and reliability. This generation, like the first, shared most of its underpinnings with the Impreza. It's basically a short, tall station wagon, the first of the small SUVs. The SG Forester covered model years 2003 to 2008. During this model range period, you had several trim levels to choose from. Of these, you had the Forester 2.5X, the XS Premium and Limited, the XT Premium and Limited, and the top of the range, the LL Bean Edition. These Foresters came with two engine choices, the EJ251 and 253 splitting halfway through the generation, and the EJ255. The 251-253 came in around 165 horsepower, and the EJ255 with its turbocharger came in between 210 and 235 horsepower. These engines were reliable, but did have their own unique issues and problems over the years. Let's start with the naturally aspirated EJ251 that then became the EJ253. These engines were affected by Subaru's notorious head gasket issues. Just to reiterate here, Subaru only had one series of engines with bad head gaskets, that being the naturally aspirated 2.5-liter EJ series 4-cylinder engines, from around the 97 to 2012 models. The issue has been so overblown that many people unfamiliar with Subaru associate all Subaru vehicles as having head gasket issues. So yes, these engines had the failure-prone single-layer graphite-coated gaskets. The coating would fail around 120 to 150,000 miles, and that's when the gasket would leak externally oil and coolant between the head and the block. So in the used car market, this is something to be wary of. If looking at used Subarus of this vintage with this mileage range on the engine, don't be afraid to ask if the head gaskets were replaced, if there's documentation of the replacement, etc. Better here to be safe than sorry. But just due to the age, most, if not all of these cars have had their head gaskets replaced, if not once, twice, because a lot of people didn't do the repair correctly the first time. There are ways to check to see if these head gaskets have been replaced and ways to see if they have been upgraded to the multi-layer steel gaskets that aren't failure prone. I have a video on this on my channel. But that's the main point of failure here, the head gaskets. Aside from that, you might want to be worried about oil leaks, checking that the timing has been serviced, timing belt, water pump, tensioner, etc. And just any other maintenance items you want to check or know about before buying. On to the EJ255, as we talked about in the Outback Legacy video. These engines have a few Achilles heels. First and foremost, the EJ255 is not known for head gasket failures due to gasket or engine design. That said, with neglect, abuse, hard driving, and poor maintenance, these gaskets can fail just as well as the failure-prone, naturally aspirated engine gaskets. The EJ255 had oiling issues to the turbocharger, the AVCS system, and the rod bearings. These vehicles were known to eat turbochargers around the age that the naturally aspirated engines blew their head gaskets, 120,000 miles to 150,000 miles. The oil feed line to the turbocharger had a banjo fitting, and the banjo bolt in this fitting had a small mesh filter inside. With neglect and lack of periodic oil changes, this filter in the bolt clogged and starved the turbocharger of oil, destroying the turbocharger. This mainly happened due to Subaru shrinking the oil filter size in half, causing the pressure relief valve to go into bypass mode, circulating debris in the engine when regular oil change intervals are not followed. The fix here is to preemptively replace the bolt with the new filterless banjo bolt. This issue is found as well in the AVCS system, as the AVCS system, or active valve control system, uses pressurized oil and these banjo bolts with filters in them to feed the system. So again, the same corrective measures are needed. On to the rod bearing issues and poor/loss of oil pressure. There were two main issues here to be concerned with: cracking oil pump pickup tubes and oil pump housing screws backing out. Some oil pumps had issues with the housing screws backing out with age and mileage. This caused pressure leaks and oil pressure drops in the engines. Not found on all of them, but some of them. It is a good idea when doing a time belt service to remove the oil pump and check these housing screws. The second issue was the brazing on the factory oil pickup tube cracking, sucking air, and causing an oil pressure loss. Both can occur, but don't always occur. Just something to be wary of. Most people preemptively replace the oil pump pickup tube and remove the oil pump and Loctite the oil pump housing screws. That is the best way to combat this potential issue. As far as driveline is concerned, on this generation of Forester, you had two transmissions to choose from: the tried and true 4EAT 4-speed conventional automatic and the 5-speed manual. The 4EAT, as we stated before, is one of Subaru's most reliable automatic transmissions ever. They will go for hundreds of thousands of miles with little to no issues, on the naturally aspirated engines, that is. The problem here is when you got the turbocharged EJ255 and an automatic transmission, because on the Forester you got the 4EAT instead of the 5EAT. And the 4EAT wasn't meant for that kind of power. There were quite a few 4EAT failures when they were optioned with turbocharged engines. So if you want a Forester XT, it's best to get the 5-speed manual or drive it like you're driving Miss Daisy. The 5MT was a very reliable transmission as well, especially with the naturally aspirated engine, but it too suffered early demise at the hands of aggressive drivers and the power level of the EJ255, mostly due to people launching the vehicle. Overall, this generation of Forester was solid. There were some wheel bearing issues, but that seems to be on par with all Subarus, especially in the rust, snow regions of the country. These Foresters, like the Legacy and Outback, had frameless windows and suffered from the torn window gussets and wind noise. They were also prone to rusting out around their rear wheel wells, as well as other areas. So you viewers in the Northeast, Midwest, and Northwest, be sure to inspect for rust before purchasing. The center console cubby door in the dashboard on these models was known for cracking and the latch breaking, as well as the center console armrest. Otherwise, the interior was pretty daggum solid. Overall, one of the best classic Foresters, and overall my favorite in looks, handling, and ride. Now on to the third generation, the SH chassis, model years 2009 to 2013. This range saw the Forester grow outward in size, gaining quite a bit of occupancy and cargo room. It also moved away from the boxy styling of the past. This is probably one of my least favorite body styles of the Forester. It wasn't very good looking in my opinion. Now during this time period we see a lot of carryover from the previous SG chassis. With engines, we see the EJ253 early on, switching over to the FB25B starting in model year 2011. Nearly all the same issues with the previous chassis EJ253 are found in this chassis, although the head gaskets were redesigned late, making them less likely to fail. The new at the time FB25B saw the end of the 2.5-liter engine head gasket issues, but on the other hand saw new issues. These issues were primarily oil consumption and oil leaks. Some, not all FB engines had oil consumption issues. Some of them were minor and some of them were major. Subaru issued recalls and replaced a lot of short blocks under warranty. This remedied a lot of the concerns with oil consumption, but oil consumption can still be an issue in the used market, so be wary of that when looking at an FB engine-equipped Forester. The driveline stayed basically the same, with the 4 EAT and the 5 MT manual transmission options at this time. Rust is still an issue, and you want to keep an eye out for that on these models just as any other Subaru. An upside of these models is the wind noise issue is no more, as they no longer use the frameless window design. Overall, it was a reliable chassis, just not my favorite. Now on to the SJ chassis. This covers model years 2014 to 2018. This Forester saw a return to the more squared-off looks of the first two generations. The SJ Forester continued the trend of growing size as well. Personally, I'd own an SJ. I really like the look of the interior-exterior as an overall great package. With the SJ, we see several trims: the 2.5i base, premium limited, touring, and the XT limited and touring. We see new transmission options and new engine options as well. The base engine is still the FB25B, 175 horsepower. But now the XT model, we see a new engine, the WRX-derived FA20F, coming in about 250 horsepower. As far as transmissions, we have the TR580, TR690, and the new 6-speed manual transmission for the Forester. The TR580 CVT and the 6-speed manual being offered as options on the FB25B engine, and the TR690 CVT on the turbocharged FA20F equipped XT model. We see the addition of the EyeSight system for the Forester range. EyeSight being Subaru's stereo camera-based pre-collision avoidance system. It's okay, but personally I'm not a big fan of it. I had it on one of my Outbacks and I'd rather have not had the system. With EyeSight being visually based, this causes issues. The system has problems working when there's snow, fog, or heavy rain. Any condition that limits visibility. This system was first added to only the top tier trims, but at the beginning of the next generation, 2019 model year, it comes as standard equipment on all Foresters. During this time period, we see the introduction of Subaru's X-Mode on the Forester. X-Mode is an electronic driving aid that helps in off-roading situations in inclement weather. X-Mode works primarily in 5 ways. 1. Your engine throttle. During normal driving, when you press on the accelerator pedal, the throttle opens and engine power is delivered. But during X-Mode, the throttle input is nerfed and you don't get that super quick acceleration. It kind of numbs the throttle to keep you from applying too much power too quickly and helps avoid you slipping your wheels. Number 2, with the transmission. With X-Mode on, the CVT is kept in a lower gear ratio, allowing you more torque and more power for low-speed driving, off-kilter situations, or slippery situations. You deliver more power to the ground. Number 3, your all-wheel drive system. During X-Mode, the coupling between the front and the rear is increased to deliver power more evenly front and rear and give you the most all-wheel drive traction possible. Number 4, the Vehicle Dynamic Control System, or VDC. The VDC system, when in X-Mode, includes a specifically enhanced LSD control. For example, if the left and right wheels are behaving differently, the system applies brakes only to the wheels that are slipping. Compared to ordinary operation of the brakes, where when you press the brake pedal, the brakes apply to all 4 wheels. The VDC system can apply braking to only the slipping wheel and apply power to those that have traction. And number 5, hill descent control. At low speeds, under 12 miles per hour, hill descent control helps to maintain vehicle starting speed for safer maneuvering. It manages the throttle and the braking, allowing the driver to fully concentrate on steering. This generation of Forester also got a big upgrade in its interior and comfort. One complaint of the interior was the touchscreen Bluetooth nav radio system. Although I have this same head unit in my 2013 Crosstrek and I haven't had any major issues with it. The system's a bit dated, but other than that, it works as should be expected. Even with these issues, it's still an awesome Forester to own, and I would gladly own an SJ. Now to the modern day, the current chassis, the SK, model years 2019 to current. The modern Forester is the nicest and most luxurious of any Forester to date. A truly modern car, if you're into that kind of thing. Some people believe the modern Forester, especially the upscale models, are just too busy and too advanced, with confusing button layouts and just too much going on around them in the cabin. The new EyeSight revamps have been called intrusive at the minimum, with new cameras in the system pointed at the driver to monitor them. Subaru has added auto stop-start to these models of Foresters as well. Said to be a gas-saving measure, but it's more of a rage-fueling, starter-killing measure in my opinion. A very annoying feature that isn't suited for the Subaru Boxer engine or CVT driveline, and a lot of buyers are very aggravated with the system and having to disable it every time they start their car. The drivetrain is pretty streamlined now, with the FB25D engine as the only engine option and the TR580 as the only driveline option. The Forester Wilderness gets a revamped CVT, but it's still based on the TR580. No more manual option and no more turbo option. The Forester is still one of Subaru's best sellers, going neck and neck with the Outback, trading spots regularly for the #1 spot. The Forester is a reliable and capable vehicle. Hopefully now you have the information you need to be an informed buyer and have the ability to get a great Forester for yourself. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.